Gary Smith, Councillor Gary Smith, are you the head of the deer committee?
Yeah, I'm the chair of
The chair,
committee.
okay, yeah. So, and also council liaison, I guess. Yeah. I guess the first thing I want to ask is feeding the deer against the law.
Well, there's a bylaw that's in place that makes it illegal to feed the deer, sorry.
Yeah, okay,
Feed
so,
the deer.
no, that's okay. I'm feeding the bears is against the law too, I'm sure. Okay, so.
Well, that falls under a different...
Provincial.
Yeah, that's a provincial thing because it's considered dangerous wildlife, right?
Right, and the deer are just a nuisance, I guess.
Yeah.
Carrying on with that,
Mm-hmm.
it's against the law to feed the deer in town. That's a municipal law. So let's say that you know that somebody's feeding the deer and you'd like to report that. What's the process?
Well, typically, now that we have Wayne Copan as our bylaw enforcement officer, you typically do a written report to council or to City Hall,
So, okay.
and then the complaint is, basically pursued by Wayne. It's also, a benefit to have pictures, if certainly if they're repeat offenders.
Okay, and how long does the process take? Like, once Wayne has got the report that you've given the City Hall, then he has to go out and...
I imagine it moves pretty quickly. I'm sure there's not, hundreds of complaints coming through. Of course, he's also involved with bylaw or building services, right? So it's just a matter of his workload, I believe.
Provided, let's say that Wayne does find that there is actually feeding going on and stuff like that, what's the next step in the process?
Well, we haven't got to the point of actually attaching a fine structure to offenders.
Okay.
But now that we've got this municipal ticketing bylaw in place for like unsightly premises and that sort of thing, it's just it's now just attaching a consequence to the deer bylaw. So that again is a thing that's passed through council on recommendation from staff. So there would be a fine structure basically for first time, second time, third time.
But there isn't actually one in place right now?
Unfortunately, no.
Okay, so there's no actual fine structure. And do you have any idea of when that might...
Well, this is our next deer committee is coming up here really quick on the 10th. So we'd like to have some discussion around that table to make the recommendation, if it's the will of the committee, to make a recommendation to council to go forward on that. Okay,
so then that would be basically a recommendation to council, and then council would have to discuss
and then council would refer it to staff, and staff will come back with a report. And
so the way that the wheels of government grind, that could be 3 council meetings from now, which could be a month and a half or more.
Well, it would probably go through the committee of the whole first, and then be raised up to a regular council meeting, and then, so it could take probably more than 3 council meetings, more like 2 or 3 months.
Right, and with the experience I've seen, every time deer comes in front of council, it becomes a bit of a hot button topic. And
well, this is what the deer committee is for, right? It's a public committee, and anyone that wants to come and listen in on it. I mean, they don't necessarily become a part of the committee. They can come and listen to it, but it is a public committee that's formed by the city. So there's input from the public, on both sides of the issue,
So when is the next one? Is the 10th? Where is it at?
I'm looking at the RDKB office.
You don't know for sure, but probably.
Yeah, I'm just waiting to hear back on whether or not we can book that space.
Okay.
We're also doing our fall deer count on that day as well.
Okay.
So we're looking for volunteers.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay, so technically at this point there are no real penalties for feeding the deer then?
Unfortunately not, no.
Not at this time, okay. So the next question here on my list was, how many deer do we have in town now? Obviously the count would be a year old then.
Well, we did a spring count, and it
okay.
was, I believe the count was 134.
So any idea how much of the herd you would have counted then, like what the total herd might be?
Yeah. I mean, the way it's done is basically our community is broken up into 5 zones, and then teams 5 teams are basically sent out, one to drive and one to count.
Right.
And if there's enough people, there's one to navigate as well. So you're making sure you're covering all the streets. So it's you're basically driving the streets. We're going to be out there at about just after 6 in the morning on the 10th, and we just count what we see. So, how representative that is of the true population is, a little open for debate.
Right.
Because you could have a dozen behind a house that you don't see, and you see 2 in the front of the house. You know what I mean? Like it's hard to say.
Okay. So,
but at least it gives us sort of like a baseline, to work from.
Okay. So your next count is on the same day as your next committee meeting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's 6 a.m. till sometime in the afternoon, I guess.
Well, no. It runs pretty quickly. Like the count doesn't take all that long.
Okay.
And then we go for breakfast and then have our meeting after that.
Okay. So it's a morning meeting.
So any volunteers, breakfast is served as a reward or compensation, I guess.
6 a.m. till 9 or 10 or something.
Well, yeah.
Right.
It doesn't take more than an hour and a half.
Okay. So
Yeah.
would you have any idea how many deer and vehicle incidents there are, or whatever?
Well, the last number I got from Jim Harrison, I believe, is 30. It was 34 last year that he had reports of, or had to put down, I guess. And again, I don't have on this computer. I don't have the count for MCON.
Okay.
But like I say, I suspect those numbers are not the same because not every collision is attended to by RCMP.
And MCON would be dealing with outside of town, in the
Yeah.
valley, etc.
Yeah.
Okay. So how does this affect our vehicle insurance rates from ICBC?
Well, we pay some of the highest rates in British Columbia.
Okay.
Yeah, and I got that directly from, I asked Dave Dale's, an agent over at Dave Dale there. I was assured that we do indeed pay higher rates.
Okay. So,
like right now, deer vehicle collisions are the main population control, as it were.
Of deer in town.
Of deer in town, yeah.
And probably a big revenue stream for the body shops.
Indeed.
Okay, I guess there's a silver lining to every cloud.
Yeah, right.
Unfortunately, not.
But a lot of times too is the deer in town getting hit. Not every deer vehicle collision results in a deer death, like immediately. Yeah. But I've certainly been witness to deer that are, the leg is flailing because it's been busted in an accident, and those deer end up either being bear fodder or just die quietly in some field somewhere, right? So I think there's the impact of deer vehicle collisions is higher, than any numbers are going to reflect, like for MCON or,
right.
Like if a deer is seen to be hit and it's suffering and whatnot, and a cop comes and puts it down. Well, okay, that's recorded, right? Yeah. But all those other injuries that take place, and
the deer just hobbles off into
the bush and dies. Who knows, right?
Yeah. Okay. And I know this has been contentious in the past and created possibilities for a lot of aggravation. But are there any plans to control the deer herd here, like calls have been talked about? Well, any other plans you might have too?
The big thing that we're working on right now is this Wild Safe
right.
BC program, which we passed through council as a resolution to get 15,000 to put toward that. At my recent recent UBCM that we went to,
right.
We had an opportunity to sit down with Steve Thompson to talk about our predicament and the predicament of many rural communities in dealing with urban deer, and what role the government anticipates playing.
And that was at UBCM?
That was at UBCM, yeah. And, you know, they weren't handing out bags of cash, and we weren't necessarily looking for bags of cash either, but at least some kind of support for the downloading that's been going on
Mm-hmm.
to municipalities in having to cope with this issue or issues,
Right.
and what assistance we might get from the government.
So WildSafe BC, possibly 50,000,
No,
and would that
15,
go 15, 15,000? Would that be going towards promoting the program or culling or?
No, it's strictly for education, so it would go towards hiring and training a regional wild safe aware manager or
Yeah.
you know, person to deliver that education program, and then materials,
Okay.
education materials.
No cull. Okay.
Not in that.
Not in that.
At the same time, we have not, of course, said that we're not going to cull. It's just we're trying to. I mean, the idea is to have a comprehensive program,
Mm-hmm.
because, like in other communities, you don't want to end up every second year having to cull another 100 animals.
Yeah.
If there is some other way to manage the population, if it's deemed necessary that we do have an initial cull, but then integrate other practices in order to keep the population down, then that's probably the most practical way of going about it.
Okay.
But like I say, you know, and this is what I raised up with Steve Thompson as well, and he says, well, you know, whatever support we can give in terms of expediting permits and whatnot to perform calls, if that's the decision of the committee and council, then he's behind it. So
Okay. So there is no actual provincial strategy to help guide communities and municipalities
Yeah.
dealing with this issue.
well, Brian Harris has been he's our local contact for the BC for the Ministry of Environment, and he's
Right.
been a terrific asset. So he's going to continue, as far as I know, to be our liaison with provincial government on this. So as he's made aware of programs or management strategies, then I'm sure he'll pass that right along to us.
Where do people find out more information about urban deer and how to live with them?
Well, there is a pamphlet that's available, and I believe it's right at City Hall.
The new city hall.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. But certainly call City Hall, and they would be able to direct people to either get this pamphlet, because I know it used to be on the desk at the
Right.
other City Hall. So.
Yes. Okay. So it
Yeah.
could be a bit soon.
And if we get rolling on this WildSafe BC, then we'll have a lot more information available.
Okay. Do you have any other thoughts along these lines about the deer or the bears or feeders or anything like that?
Well, I mean, we live in an interface rural area, you know, so we have to acknowledge that any problem that we may have or issues that we might have are often exacerbated by our own behaviors, our lack of understanding of how to interact with wildlife, and you know, engaging in behaviors that are not conducive to keeping wildlife wild, so to speak. So you know, feeding, petting, you know, like you know, Bambis are cute. You know, there's no mistake in that, but they're not pets.
That's right. Yes.
These are wild. They are wildlife, and you know, looking at those doe eyes and thinking, oh, well, cute, come here, Bambi, you know, sort of thing. It's you're not helping it. So it's better just to leave wildlife wild.
Okay. So when last week I interviewed a gentleman who just a couple of days before the City Hall fire, he was walking a dog on the riverbank, just on the Interforce side of the bridge there, walking towards downtown. And when he came to the end of the actual gravel and sand, and he's looking off into the forest bush ahead of him, he sees a little big cat head pop up and stare at him. He's pretty
Okay.
sure he saw a cougar there.
Right.
So We walked that same area. We didn't find that. We definitely found a lot of evidence of animals doshing down in the long grasses and stuff. But what we did find was a small house that somebody had put out there. Now he said it's been sitting there for a couple of months. It's like a doghouse, except it's only got maybe an 8-inch high opening to it. And the sawdust we could see through the little doorway. It was obviously fresh, so somebody's maintaining this. I have no idea what little wild animal they think they're helping out by giving them a little house.
Right. No. Yeah.
Like, people's attitudes are a real issue with this thing.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe too much National Geographic or something like that, or not enough. It's hard to say.
Have you heard anything in terms of the reports on bear and cougar around town?
Yeah, I've heard that there's been a number of sightings of bears, both by my place, which is near the cemetery there,
Right.
and I saw one maybe a week and a half ago down by 7th near Clifton Estates.
Okay.
And I also heard that there's a couple up in Valmar, I believe. So, you know, whether they're all the same bears or not, it's hard to say, but...
it's that time of year, too.
Yeah, and it's that time of year, too. Yeah.
Okay.
No, I've definitely heard of more bear sightings than I've usually heard of.
Okay. Have you heard of any cougar sightings at all?
I haven't heard any cougar sightings, no.
Okay. And one last question, and I don't know whether you would actually have any information on this or not, but we've just gone through our first year of the kitchen waste redirection program with the green bins and stuff. Do you have any information about whether the green bins have exacerbated the problem with wildlife at all?
No, because the fact is, all that stuff is being disposed of in your regular waste. So just separating out the two,
Okay.
like
Like it was out there anyway.
It was out there anyway, yeah. So
Okay.
if a bear was going to be going after your garbage,
Mm-hmm.
it would be going after your garbage regardless, because all that stuff was, instead of in 2 bins, it was all in 1 bin. So
Okay.
yeah.
So, one little follow-up on that one. When it was out there anyways, basically it was usually in a bag, and then the bag got thrown in. Now, I know that with the green bin, the brown bin, green bin program, you can get bin liners. So when your bin is sitting there, it's got a liner, they come, they dump it, the liner goes with it, and the inside of the bin should be relatively clean or easy to clean out. But, and I've only asked one person working on the trucks this. We use a liner at home, both bins, but I know that our neighbor doesn't, and I know that other people don't. And while I was watching a news item from Vancouver where they have an increasing rat problem, and some people are pointing at their kitchen waste redirections program as a possible reason for that.
Right.
They were showing a woman scraping her kitchen waste into her little bin, no liner, taking it out and throwing it into her big bin, no liner, and then showing the inside of the bin, which had a bunch of sticky-looking, stinky stuff stuck to the side of the bin.
Yeah.
And when the truck comes and pours that out, the stuff that's stuck to the side of the bin just doesn't leave, and it sits there and goes through the process of decomposition. And so I asked one of the guys in the trucks here, so how many people use liners? He figures it's under 30%.
Okay.
So the reason I ask about the green bins is that even when they don't have stuff in them, for the people who don't use the liners and don't have the time to hose them out, they're still standing there as a kind of olfactory bulletin board saying, "Hey, come here." The billboard, stinky, nice, possible food source here. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, you know, you got to think about how many people compost. There's a big stinky pile of decomposing organic matter, you know. But you know, is it making an issue worse, or is it a bad thing to compost? Like, I don't know if.
Well, what goes into the green bin is more than what most people will compost at home, because you were told that the industrial
you're true. Yeah, you're right.
Like
you're right. Yeah. Well, it's really hard to say. I don't know if there's been you know, have more incidents with wildlife being attracted to the grain bins or not.
Okay.
But like, I don't really have the stats on that.
Okay.
Tim Dewick would probably be a good
Guy to
resource for
talk
that
to.
for the regional district. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that was it. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Volunteers for the deer count, get a hold of me, 443-1256. Thank you.
There you go. Councillor Gary Smith.